We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday.
Good morning. How many churches did you get to kind of waltz into some cool music? But good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of the Rappahannock on this beautiful May morning. My name is Barbara Haynes, and I will be your service leader this morning. We are happy you are here. You are welcome in this special place where we honor and appreciate whomever you love, whatever your beliefs. We welcome you here at this UUF Fellowship as we consider your presence a gift. We also welcome those who are taking part of our service on Zoom. You are an important part of our congregation, and I'm glad you're with us. We're going to light our chalice now. We light our chalice to remind ourselves of our highest aspirations, to inspire us to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. We are not light.
Okay, don't burn your fingers.
Yeah.
Now we're on.
May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe and to each other. We also light this congregation to honor in kinship with all the Unitarian Universalist fellowship congregations around the world, as we are bound together in the knowledge that love, not fear, can change the world. That's quite a challenge, right?
That's the smoke coming off of it.
Okay, seriously now. This is Memorial Day weekend, the official start of summer. Memorial Day, May 27th, exists to honor those who gave their last full measure of devotion. It is a day when we forge a spiritual connection with the fallen, a community of reverence and gratitude. The men and women we salute died to protect the freedoms that U.S. citizens enjoy and often have taken for granted. The topic today that you see in your program talks about the scourge of white supremacy, a very timely conversation in this world that we live in today. As we begin our service, we affirm that we welcome everyone and value all who walk through our doors. We don't just say it. It is our commitment, as stated in the first UU principle, that we affirm and promote the worth and dignity of every person. We support the concept of diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, which is an organizational framework that seeks to promote the fair treatment and full participation of all people, particularly groups who have been historically underrepresented, subject to discrimination on the basis of identity or disability. There's another term in the news these days with negative connotations, the word woke, which is derived from the African American vernacular English meaning alert to racial prejudice and discrimination. We recognize that another word for woke is open-minded, and that's who we are. Okay, in keeping with our program, we're going to stand as willing to able. I'm going to sing the song, We Shall Overcome. The words are in your bulletin.
And we're all going to support each other and to sing it without accompaniment. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday.
We now come into part of our service that is a time of personal connection, the expression of joys and concerns. Life has always had its ebbs and flows, ups and downs, good times, times of anxiety, as well as times of sadness and happiness. We all seem, at one time or another, to share in this experience. But when you come up and place a piece of sea glass in the bowl representing the river of life and share with us your joy or concern, you give us the opportunity to let you know that we care. It gives us an opportunity to share a hug, to personally touch base, and to see if we can be of help in times of concern. To me, this is a really unique and wonderful part of what takes place here. If you prefer to stay seated, just let me know and I would be glad to put a piece of glass in the bowl for you. But this is your opportunity to share with us.
I have both joys and concerns. My concern is for Lois Williams, who turned 92 yesterday, and we are going to celebrate her birthday even though she's not here today. She fell on Monday and broke her hip and ended up having a hip replacement operation Monday afternoon.
Surgery to fix.
Surgery to fix Monday afternoon, and has been in the hospital ever since, and hopefully will be back in town tomorrow. She's doing okay, and I know she's sorry that she's not going to be here, and I promised to save a piece of birthday cake for her. Ruth has brought a birthday cake because it's her grandson Oliver's 21st birthday yesterday. We are going to celebrate his birthday, and I will be 81 on Wednesday. So we're going to celebrate mine too. So those are my joys, and you're all invited to stay for a piece of birthday cake. Thank you.
If I may elaborate, Janet, I think you need to stop inviting my mother to board retreats, which are end of May, and this is the second year in a row that she has left the retreat in an ambulance. She did fall on Monday, and ambulance, everyone who was there, she just keeps remarking how glad she was to fall there because everybody cared and helped. And I've been visiting her every day in Mechanicsville. She had surgery, it went well. She's made the decision to come do her rehab at RWC. She will be living for the next month, I expect, and maybe longer, in the health center portion for skilled nursing. And I know everyone has been asking about her, and you miss her and she misses you, and I hope you will continue to visit her, because tomorrow I go away for 3 weeks. And the choice was be with her daughter up in Alexandria at a rehab place or be here. And we talked about that, and because this is familiar and she has friends from UUFR and also the Historical Society who can visit in my absence, I really appreciate that. So thank you very much. And I'm going to Rwanda. I will be back on Monday, June 17th. And I will also spend the morning on the 18th, which is a primary day?
Yes.
Yes, I'm going to, with Hanukkah, have the 6 to 8 a.m. slot for the Whitestone voters to greet them.
I have been asked by Dave Rowley to thank you all for the great concern and support you've given to his wife. We saw Marge, maybe a week and a half ago. She looks great, and the report from Dave is that her spirits are wonderful, and she's making her way through the things that she needs to take care of. So thank you very much.
You stole my thunder, but I wanted to wish my grandson a happy 21st birthday, and everybody here, please wish him a happy birthday. And you know, the really cool thing about phones now is, I guess it's cool, but sometimes it's not so cool if they're bad memories, but all of his birthdays, or all of the pictures of him over the last, I don't know how many years, showed up on Christy's phone, and one of my favorite was him here at the podium when he had to stand on a stool and was doing a talk. So it's great to have you here, Oliver, and happy 21. And I also want to quickly thank Diana for all that you do here at UUFR, and most especially for taking on the pledge to end racism and for doing the service here today, which I think is incredibly important, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
This is more of a concern since everything's already been said about my birthday. Primaries are coming up. Go out and vote. I know this is probably the wrong crowd to be saying that to. I'm sure most of y'all are going out there to vote, but go out and vote.
I have a joy. Yesterday, your Civitas trustees had the pleasure of meeting with our 2024 Civitas scholars, and they are an amazing group. Your trustees are, the group was Tom Parrish, Tom Kinney, Selene Roden, and myself. And the students, the scholars, are people that come from low-income families, but we check them out, what kind of people they are, because they write an essay. And they are people that help their families are challenged. That's why they're in the low-income area. Many times it's a single mother or a parent that's ill or no parent at all. Another thing we look at is not only their grades, but the fact that they help the family, and all of them work jobs out in the community. They also volunteer, and they're active in their school and hold offices. They're just an amazing group. We have one that would be going to JMU to be with the idea that she's going to be a nurse practitioner. She's already in her sophomore year because she took dual enrollment. And she's going to go right into the nurse practitioner program, which is the master's degree. We have one who's going to major in computer science with the idea of working in the area of cybersecurity, something we really need. And we have one who's going to be a businesswoman and major in finance. One young lady that of the group could not come because she had to work that day. And so, as I say, when we get together, I'm always so impressed with these young people because They are determined, they know how important their education is, and they are determined to make a success of it. So I'm going to put 4 sea glasses in, 1 for each of our students, because they are special, and we are helping them on their journey. I know that sometimes that we do not get up and do a joint concern because we're just not ready for it. But know that we care, and when you feel like it, please come up and share what you're feeling, your feelings with us. We now have a reading by our speaker, Diane Jamison.
So I'm going to not read the pledge at this point. I will save that for our closing words. Instead, I'm going to read a poem that was written by Harriet Mullen. And she published this poem in her book called Sleeping with the Dictionary. It's called We Are Not Responsible. We are not responsible for your lost or stolen relatives. We cannot guarantee your safety if you disobey instructions. We do not endorse the cause or claims of people begging for handouts. We reserve the right to refuse service to anyone. Your ticket does not guarantee that we will honor your reservations. In order to facilitate our procedures, please limit your carry-on. Before taking off, please extinguish all smoldering resentments. If you cannot understand English, you will be moved out of the way. In the event of a loss, you better look out for yourself. Your insurance was canceled because we can no longer handle your frightful claims. Our handlers lost your luggage, and we are unable to find the key to your legal case. You were detained for interrogation because you fit the profile. You are not presumed to be innocent if the police have reason to suspect you are carrying a concealed wallet. It's not our fault you were born wearing a gang color. It's not our obligation to inform you of your rights. Step aside, please, while our officer inspects your bad attitudes. You have no rights we are bound to respect. Please remain calm, or we can't be held responsible for what happens to you. Let's take a moment to reflect on those words.
I think it's going down, so that's okay. The purpose of the fellowship is to encourage all who gather here to go more generous in spirit and action. This is the great end of all world's faith traditions, to bring human beings closer together by acts of creation and compassion. We now take up an offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit, an offering that will support the self-supporting church and its many ministries. Our fellowship has developed a number of goals and projects designed to meet the desires and needs of this congregation, as well as that of the largest community. Together, we have really accomplished a great deal, and we hope to continue doing so in the future. If you are a visitor today, Please let the basket pass. Your presence is our gift. Please know we very much appreciate your generosity and endeavor to be good stewards of the gifts that you provide. Well, now we're coming to the time of the program that we look forward to. Diana Jamison's presentation of Dismantling White Supremacy. Diana, as you know, has been a long-term member of UUFR and active in many programs. She's engaged right now, as was mentioned, in leading the Pledge to End Racism series. And that's a collaborative effort between UUFR and the Bay Center. She is currently serving as co-chairman of the UFR Program Committee. She's a long-standing member and has been actively involved in various important roles in the fellowship. In her busy life, and additionally, she owns a boutique shop, works as a psychotherapist, and is a talented artist. I've seen her pictures in many art shows. So, in addition, she is a mother of 3 and the companion to a poodle named Tilly. So I'm going to now turn over the program over to Diana.
Thank you for having me, and I want everyone to take note on how easy this is to come up here and present a sermon today. Before I begin, I'd like to share a couple of backstories. Some of you may wonder how our Sunday morning guest speakers are recruited. It all begins about a year in advance when the program committee submits a budget to cover the fees for a guest minister. The average honorarium for this is $300. During Susan's tenure as our minister, we typically had a guest speaker, a minister speaker about once a month. However, due to budget constraints in 2024, we reduced our invitation to once a quarter. And then after Susan's departure, the board agreed to allocate additional funds, and for the rest of the year, we do plan to have a minister 1 to 2 times a month. On other Sundays, we reach out to members of our congregation and our community who have a message to share with us. We send out invitations a few months before their scheduled speaking engagement. Unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, one of our scheduled speakers, who was scheduled for today, had to decline at the last minute. We were under pressure to find a last-minute replacement. We needed someone who could create a talk in a short amount of time and be available on a holiday weekend. Doable, right? So, not to belabor the point, that's how you got me. A fill-in without a message. Google it. Oh, I do that whenever I don't know what to do or say. Siri, UUA prepared sermons, I ask. Voila! That's when I discovered that UUA offers the Sermon of the Month series to help provide small congregations with quality worship resources. And interestingly enough, the first thing that popped up was Amanda's sermon, Dismantling White Supremacy. Call it coincidence, fingerprinting by the internet, or as Sarah Mackey says, sometimes the universe knows what it's doing. This sermon fit right in with my recent work with Tom Coy and the Bay Center around the Pledge to End Racism. I presented it in that series along with leaders of our community, Vashti Jones, Reverend Linwood Blizzard, Reverend Tyron Williams, Angela Blunt, and Ruth Micklem, all who graciously shared their insights on the history of racism in our nation, the insidious evolution of Jim Crow, the vital need to identify and challenge implicit biases and microaggressions, and the enduring structural racism that exists in our society today. And as I recently shared with the congregation a few Sundays ago, I was especially touched by the childhood memories of an elderly black gentleman who, with a silent tear running down his cheek, shared the complexities of his upbringing in the Northern Neck. This story was met by another distressing memory shared by one of our members, as she recalled being a helpless passenger riding in a car while the white teenage boy driver played chicken with the lives of a black mother and two small children. Oh, wait, another side story. As I was organizing my thoughts for this paragraph above, and I run things through Grammarly to kind of help me with my spelling and wording, this message popped up. Can't help with the text. Grammarly Systems is unavailable for the selected text because it contains sensitive content. Try something else. Now that's a puzzle. Well, okay, we'll try the something else of Amanda's highly sensitive words. Amanda begins with, Unitarian Universalism is currently taking a profoundly important step in committing to work as an entire body, a beloved community against white supremacy. In order to make this commitment as effective as possible as we move forward, it's important to reflect on the internal struggle that we who are white may undergo as we come to recognize, accept the reality of, and commit to working against white supremacy. These responses and emotions can halt us in our track, or we can recognize them and work with them to enable ourselves to move forward and to support each other along the way. We might view this process as a set of stages. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross suggested that there were 5 stages of grief. In contrast, one might envision at least 11 stages of emotional struggle around accepting white supremacy as a white person. The stages don't always happen in order. They can overlap, and we may move back and forth between them. But they are denial, resistance, discomfort, defensiveness, guilt, fear, paralysis, anger, sadness, resignation, and commitment. Even those of us who are further along than denial may not be living in commitment full time, but we may be there part of the time. And we can work towards being there more of the time, but often we don't. We reject the idea that racism is present and harming people. We say, we had a black president, how bad could it be? We say, Opus seems to be doing pretty well, and ignore the fact that upscale jewelry stores have refused to let her in since black people surely don't have enough money for expensive jewelry. We proudly say we are colorblind and that we don't care whether people are white, black, yellow, red, or purple. Signaling by our mention of purple people that we are not taking the whole matter terribly seriously. The stage of denial may not involve deep-seated unconscious inability to see what is right in front of us. We may simply be insanely busy and focused on our day-to-day lives. We may struggle with our own challenges. We may well be ignorant of the depth of continuing white supremacy today. Once we confront the reality and the enormity of racism, we may move to resistance. We don't want this to be true. We are being forced to see what's going on, and we hate it and resent it. Thank you very much. Our pass through resistance may feel like an adult temper tantrum minus the actual kicking and screaming. After we've spent some time resisting the reality of white supremacy, we may become uncomfortable. We start figuring out the implication of racism in our own lives. We may wonder whether we are bad people, or what our friends of color think of us, or whether our successes have always been due to our hard work and talent as opposed to preferential treatment. Perhaps it's not surprising then that distress may lead to defensiveness. My family didn't own slaves, we might say. I have black friends, we might say. I've never used a racial slur, we might say. And the list goes on and on. But it's all in service of our attempt to rescue our wounded feelings and say that at some level, this is not about us. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, this is about us. Because who else could it be about? Once we cannot avoid that fact, we may find that we struggle with guilt. Guilt because we benefit from white supremacy. Guilt because, truth be told, we like not being stopped by the police when we're going 50 in a 45-mile-an-hour zone because we are late for church. Guilt because we could be resisting racism more actively than we are, pretty much all the time. Guilt that we resent having to deal with the topic at all. Then there's fear. We might be afraid of appearing racist. We don't want to say the wrong thing in a social justice context and embarrass ourselves. And we may fear what will happen if we start taking personal responsibility for working against racism. We think we might become that person, the one who awkwardly interrupts racist comments and jokes, the one who calls out, making them uncomfortable and becoming uncomfortable ourselves, the one who might risk friendships, family relationships, and even jobs to point out racist words and actions in front of us, promulgated by people we love, people we respect, and people who pay us. At this point, we may find ourselves emotionally immobilized, paralyzed by a combination of helplessness and hopelessness. We may know that having good intentions about being part of a solution means very little on its own. We want to do the right thing, and sometimes we succeed, but not often enough, it seems. The enormity of racism, the horrific power of its impact on people of color, and the relatively little that it seems we can do come together. But we may eventually break through the paralysis and get to some pretty deep anger. Anger at the system that hurts people, anger at the individuals who hurt other people, anger at people who don't see the harm, or perhaps see it but do not seem to care about it. Anger that this commitment to work racial justice is so hard, even if it's definitely the right commitment to take. Anger that every time the country makes 2 steps forward on racial equality, it takes at least 1 step back. And unsurprisingly, underneath everything we've yet encountered is deep, abiding sadness. Sadness that white supremacy ever came to pass at all. Grief at the suffering endured by people of color. Sadness that some people feel so disrespected, they have to find someone else to look down on. Sadness that the many and profound gifts that people of color have to offer the world are in many cases not available because the individuals in question are not able to get a good education or experience violence, or they encounter the criminal justice system and are treated unfairly by it, or aren't taken seriously and seen as culturally inferior. Eventually, we get to resignation. We can't deny it, or we can deny it, we can resist it, we can rage or cry, but there it is, white supremacy. How we feel about it is beside the point. Our intentions are beside the point. We trust good evidence, and the evidence is compelling both historically and in the present. White supremacy is real. So now, what are we going to do? We can't unlearn what we have learned. We have agreed to be uncomfortable for the rest of our lives, and we are fine with that as we can be. And finally, we begin to reach the closest thing to the final stage, commitment. The willingness to stay in solidarity, to keep learning, to keep listening, to keep contributing where we can. It can be hard to stay in this zone, but once we have had a taste of commitment, we know for sure how important this work is, and we keep returning to it. Denial, resistance, discomfort, defensiveness, guilt, fear, paralysis, anger, sadness, resignation, commitment. These are places we may find ourselves as we move from cluelessness about racism to a degree of understanding and a pledge to be part of the solution. Moving through the stages of confronting both the racial structures of society and our place in them is profoundly difficult. But fortunately, we do not have to do it alone. In fact, we can't do it alone. If we work together, we can support each other in our difficult growth processes, in understanding of white supremacy, and in our willingness to be in solidarity with communities of color. We, the beloved community, can respond to those among us who are in denial about white supremacy by gently and non-judgmentally being witness to its reality. We can bring up the topic. We can talk about our understanding of ourselves as colorblind and describing what changed. We can comment on racism as it appears around us. We can ask that reveal the double standard hidden in some kinds of talk about race, such as inquiring when someone mentions black on black crime, why they are not also talking about white on white crime, since almost all crime is interracial due to racial segregation. These actions are difficult to take, and we are likely to be uncomfortable taking them, But if our actions make one life easier, freer, or richer, our discomfort is worth it. We, the beloved community, respond to those among us who resist the reality of white supremacy simply by being good listeners, providing an open and non-anxious presence for them. And this can continue into the phases of discomfort and defensiveness. We, the beloved community who are taking the pledge to end racism, can respond to those among us struggling with the guilt related to being white in a white supremacist society, both by being supportive and pointing out some realities that can be helpful. It's only human to be grateful for inequality when it benefits us. It's only natural to resent having to spend our precious time, money, and energy trying to end something that we didn't ask to exist in the first place. It's only reasonable to react with stress when we can't hold back the ocean with a toy bucket and feel we should try harder even if we know it's not sustainable. If we can jettison our guilt, we will be more free to take up the responsibility of being part of the solution. We, the beloved community who are taking the pledge to end racism, can respond to those among us struggling with fear by telling our stories and showing how we got through difficult situations. Whether those situations involving falling on our face in front of activists of color or having a painful conversation with a friend or relative. For many of us, when it comes to fear, the only way out is through. We might make fewer mistakes over time. And as for those difficult conversations of calling people out, the second time, we might be just a little less afraid. And the third time, a little less afraid still. We, the beloved community who are taking the pledge to end racism, can respond to those among us struggling with paralysis, immobilization, helplessness, hopelessness, by pointing to the historical successes of the civil rights movement and the multitudes who fight on today. And we ourselves can be models for action, however modest and preliminary. Doing anything is better than doing nothing. We know this, and we can demonstrate it. We, the beloved community who are taking the pledge, can respond to those among us struggling with anger and sadness and resignation in the same way we respond to some of the earlier stages with good listening, gentle support, and great compassion. We love each other through the difficulty and into acceptance and engagement with white supremacy in many ways we might work against it. And so finally, the beloved community who are taking the pledge welcome those who have reached the stage of commitment, even though we struggle to stay committed ourselves. We care for one another, encourage one another, celebrate progress, mourn continued losses, and keep at it day after day, year after year. We make these promises and act on them. We join the prophetic people who make up the history of Unitarian Universalism and those who are hard at work today in Unitarian Universalism. And with these promises and actions, we proclaim our commitment to a world bursting with joy for all people. A world where people of color do not need to confront racial slurs, discrimination, or violence. A world where no one needs to specify that Black lives matter because it's so patently obvious they do. We don't live in that world yet, but we are working our way towards it. one person at a time, one action at a time, one stage at a time. And we're taking care of each other on the way by confronting the reality of white supremacy head on. We build a world where white supremacy is only a bad memory. So may we build this world alone and together every day of our lives. Amen and blessed be. Okay, folks, all you have to do is get up here and pretend like you're Thea Marshall.
My question is, what do you do as part of the organization? I can't remember the exact name of it that you're part of.
The pledge.
The pledge, okay. The organization is called the Pledge.
Well, the organization is called UU and the Day Center.
Okay, I just wasn't sure. So what kinds of things do you do? I listened to your talk and I understood and I recognize all the stages. But what is it that you actually do either daily or as part of the group or whatever?
Okay, so the way it all started for me was Ruth had a session on, I think it was on building white allies, or
Understanding whiteness.
understanding whiteness. And so I started doing some reading, and then there was a training at UU Church in Richmond, that other part of Richmond. Glen Allen. Belinda and Susan and I went to that together, I believe, and we were trained, sort of, to be facilitators, and then we returned, and actually Ruth was the one who organized 2 or 3 sessions that met with great attendance from the community. I believe that Ruth did her sessions in 2 days. They were 2 straight days of learning about how to overcome racism and the history of racism in the United States. So when Tom asked if I would facilitate, or he asked if someone would come forward, and I felt like, oh my God, I've taken this training and I've never done it and it's probably my turn. So I told Tom that I would do that, and so we decided to get together for 2-hour segments for 6 weeks. So we met here at UUFR on Tuesday evenings, and we broke things down into what I would call small manageable tasks, and we invited a guest speaker to come each night. And so what did we do? We educated ourselves a lot, and we talked a lot about microaggression and what's that other word I'm thinking of? Implicit bias. And we watched videos, and we did role play, and the guest speakers really shared with us their perspective in history. We did learn about what it was like growing up here in the Northern Neck, being black. We had one session where Vashti Jones spoke, and a good number of people came to support her from the black community, and that was quite a revealing discussion. So we educated ourselves, and we identified what small things can we do every day to make a difference, to confront racism as it's happening in our daily lives. Okay, Ruth has volunteered to answer that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the point of the pledge is it really is about some internal work and education. And the little thing, which is not such a little thing, is dealing with ourselves. That's probably the big thing, then the little things tend to fall in place. And then I think the other thing the pledge attempts to do is to teach us to talk to other white people, which is probably one of the other little things that kind of is a big thing, that because that's the piece that really makes that difference is educating our friends and our family and carrying some of the things that you learn. And there may be little things about the history. It may be just about Jim Crow and what that is, or it might be about what does it mean? What is a microaggression and what does that really mean? So there is that education piece. I think the last thing that's important is in the pledge, you actually create a safe space to talk about race. And because those safe spaces don't really exist.
The message from Tyron Williams was, don't stay silent. You know, don't say silent.
I picked up on one word you said, Penny. You said something I'm uncomfortable with. Part of what we got to do is get out of our comfort zone and be willing to step out there. I think one of the greatest men that I ever knew, and I've known a lot of people, but there has been nobody like Joe Curry. Joe Curry was one of a kind. And of course, Joe had to his advantage. I mean, he could take you on for, here comes Tom Parrish and his purple Lincoln again, or I'd take him a cup of coffee. That's what I like about the Northern Neck. I get white people to bring me a cup of coffee. And at the same time, he would take on the black community. He could do it because he could cross there. But when he passed, his service at the middle school was packed, as most of you know. And one of his, I don't know, his son-in-law, or I remember saying that we got to get out of our comfort zone. And he was addressing both communities. And that's the hard thing to do. I mean, it really, really is, to get out of your comfort zone and to take a step to try to communicate.
Right.
This is just a suggestion for the appropriate committee, because I know we've got a lot of social justice committees. Here's a suggestion. Why don't we invite the church across the street over for coffee after one of our, let's just have them join us for coffee hour. And I'm sure we got a lot of refreshments, and more than our normal
A lot of food, a lot of
but,
good food.
and then really encourage people to stay and just have it casual. My guess is something would grow out of that too, as we talk about some getting together again, but just start off casually.
Just a couple things. One, I attended, I think, one of the first classes that Ruth did. And the thing that I did after coming out of that was still in my comfort zone, was I started reading books like The New Jim Crow and several other things. And there are quite a few of them in our library available for you, because it was a part of the education that I needed about how the world really operated today, because I was ignorant of that. I really did not realize what some of the laws of this country do to people who are incarcerated and other types of things. To respond to Eddie's comments, we started a little bit of outreach. Belinda went over and talked to the people from Mount Vernon about having members come over to our kids' Easter celebration and fall celebration. The response she got was not very good at that point. I was really pleased that several of us were at the installation of the new minister, and my plan is to start sort of step by step. I plan to send him some materials on I don't think he knows much about UU. When I went and introduced myself after his installation, I could tell he wasn't really sure what it was we were, so I hope to send him, our newsletter, information about our website, so he can begin to determine whether the relationship is, where we can have that relationship. And one of the things I was really pleased at is his talk on his installation is, let's meet at the top. And I think that's where we can meet. And let's look at what our values are, not what our faith is, and maybe we can meet there. So I think it's going to be a step-by-step process to get them comfortable with the communication with us.
Well, this is pretty simple. Just take the role of the job.
And that has happened in the past and has not been well received. So I think we've got a new minister over there, we've got new people here, and I think we can begin that process.
Eddie, part of the conversation at the pledge that Tom and I did was when the Black members came to and talked with us, they talked about how they historically being in a white space was not a safe place to be.
Right.
And for them to come was a step, but the better thing that happened was they started to feel comfortable to open up and talk about personal experiences. And they talked about how difficult it is to walk into a white space because the trust is not, historically has not been there.
I think it seems to me we have a lot to learn. Yes. We had two ladies here, two ladies who had belonged to the Black church in, I believe, Newport News, and had, because they were gay and married, they left their church and they tried to go to the church in Glen Allen, and they talked about their experience there, and in Glen Allen they meant well, but they, like we all do, they said the wrong things or had the wrong comment when they were talking about, I think it was to the fact that there was no Black Lives Matter sign out in the front of the church. But just, we're so clueless sometimes that how we put words together to express things. And we mean well, but sometimes we're very clumsy.
I want to talk to you just because of the way that you talk, just because I can't really understand you. Why would you say that to somebody? Talk to people. Your waitress, don't look down on your waitress because they say, yo, what's going on? Okay, that's how people talk. It's a different generation. I'm sorry, it's not, your preferred English, or, and if you don't like their culture, understand where their art comes from, right? There's misogyny rooted in their culture, and that's how it is, so it's hard to deal with that, but understand, educate yourself on the origins of that, why those things are so deep rooted in their culture, and why, white people don't really understand that, because, not to point anybody out, but has anybody ever in here listened to a rap album all the way through? There you go. There you go. Halfway. Okay. So there you go. You give it a chance, It's different, it's strange, but, if you engage in somebody else's way of life, or somebody else's, art, culture, differences, you start to understand. It starts to become apparent why, they think the things that they think, so.
One of the small things that I do, and I've done this with a close friend, is what I hear all the time in this area and in the South in general is my Black gardener, or my Black seamstress, or identifying people if they're Black. Now, you don't say my white gardener, but they say my Black gardener, and I've called a friend on this several times. I say, what's the difference what color they are? Would you say white gardener? And I confronted people with that when they say that, because I hear it all the time around here.
You had this class on the pledge to end racism, and I have sat here and listened to everybody refer to Black people, white people, My question is, in that discussion with your speakers that you had at the classes, was there ever any discussion about the preference of identification? Because, you know, it hasn't been too many years ago that we were all very tuned into saying African American. We didn't say black.
So I'm curious, do we know what is the best way to describe people of the African American race? I mean, I don't know, because I catch myself, if I say black, I catch myself saying, oops, I didn't mean to say that. And yet I don't know what's proper. What's the best way to describe people of that race?
Emma. Go for it. She has a response.
Okay.
I actually have a very specific answer for that type of question. I obviously have both white parents, but until I was about 10, I was raised by my nana, who was a black woman. And I asked her the same question when I was in middle school, because the lines got very blurred because middle school's hard. And the way she described it to me, I've never forgotten, and it's that we don't call white people Caucasians unless we're being super specific and we're talking about very logical, analytical processes, so we say Caucasian. That is an instance in which you would use African American. To call them black is not rude, that's not disrespectful, as long as you don't have hateful intentions behind that.
I have black people in my family. My stepfather's black, and I have beautiful stepbrothers and nieces and nephews, and they would say the same thing. When I started saying African American for a little while, they're like, "You're kidding me?" Just black is fine.
Of understanding all this. And one of the first things we do is the origin of race. And that's the opportunity to then talk about that. So I think that's it sounds like everybody really does want to explore and do this.
We extinguish the chalice with the hope that it might flow gently in our hearts. May it guide your way until next we meet. We extinguish the flame, but we keep the lights in our hearts with the message of love and justice, taking it from this place to the world we live in until we are together again.
So I would like to close by reading the pledge that is in the left side of your bulletin. I believe that every person has worth as an individual. I believe that every person is entitled to dignity and respect regardless of race or color.
I believe that every thought and every act of racial prejudice is harmful. If it is my thought or act, then it is harmful to me as well as to others. Therefore, from this day forward, I will strive daily to eliminate racial prejudice from my thoughts and actions. I will treat all people with dignity and respect. I will commit to working with others to transform this community into a place that treats people of all races, ethnicities, and cultures with justice, equity, and compassion. And I will strive daily to honor this pledge, knowing that the world will be a better place because of my efforts.
And as Susan would say, peace be with you.